SpongeBob is one of the few cartoons that hasn't gone through what I like to call the Fairly OddParents syndrome. When a show has a great cast for a few seasons, but later adds random characters to keep the show fresh, which ultimately just kills the show. And I for once have had enough of it. Which is why I'm gonna become part of the problem. I selected 10 of the most iconic locations in all of SpongeBob and then drew my ideas for brand new characters that would fit in each place, all done using Microsoft PowerPoint. Let's start with the most iconic location in the entire show, Conch Street, aka the home of SpongeBob, Squidward, and Patrick. And right off the bat, this is gonna be difficult. Adding a new neighbor here isn't easy, because the three of them already work so well together. Their personalities balance each other out. SpongeBob and Patrick are playful and eccentric, while Squidward is serious and grumpy. Analyzing their color schemes, all of them are basically just pastel variations of the four primary colors, leaving us with one option for what color the new character could be, green. And the animal I thought would work best would be sea anemone. I opened up MS Paint to sketch my initial idea. This sea anemone character would have a blocky design with 4 rectangular legs and big bulging eyes, eyelashes, a bean-like mouth, and obviously the tentacles up top, which sort of look like hair. I got the color scheme down, and now it was time to do the hard part. Try to replicate the SpongeBob style and make her feel like an actual character in the show. It took me a bit to figure it out, but I think I did a pretty good job. Meet Annie, SpongeBob's new next door neighbor. She usually keeps to herself, tending to the flowers in her house. She doesn't engage with SpongeBob and Patrick's shenanigans, but she's not opposed to them, unlike Squidward who actively goes against them. Therefore, they bother him way more than they do Annie. So she manages to live a mostly relaxed life. This is just the first design out of 10, and they keep getting better and better, so please consider liking this video if you enjoy, and subscribing also helps out a ton. Thank you. Moving on to SpongeBob's iconic job, the Krusty Krab. And guys, is it just me or are they absolutely overworking SpongeBob? I mean, Mr. Krab does management work, Squidward is a cashier. And SpongeBob? Well, he's the fry cook, but also waiter, janitor, garbage duty. There's a bit of an imbalance here. So let's add a new character that can take on some of SpongeBob's duty, and even a new duty that never really goes addressed in the Krusty Krab. So my idea for this character is to have it be a sea slug. I started by blocking up the body to give it that slimy feel. I added 4 tentacles up top and then went on to construct the face, giving them very tired eyes, as well as a less than happy mouth. I gave them a bunch of spots all around their body, a layer underneath their outer body, just like sea slugs have, and finally, some feathery gills growing on their back. And, well, I think we can all tell that something is very wrong about this design. No, it's not that. Not every design is immediately going to be perfect. First of all, this design just plain out looks ugly. So the first step in the process is to simply experiment. And I think we can all tell that some of these designs are questionable. But finally, I ended up on a design that I was actually satisfied with. But it still looks entirely out of place within our brightly colored cast. And not only that, having another gloomy character in the same chain as Squidward will basically just ruin his entire characterization. So we need to completely restructure the entire concept for this character. And with that, meet Molly. She's the newest employee at the Krusty Krab, who SpongeBob found one day eating from the trash, and Mr. Krab thought she would make for a good and cheap employee. Because of Molly's fondness for eating garbage, she works as the janitor for the Krusty Krab. But mostly, her main job, and the duty I mentioned that was never addressed in the Krusty Krab, is food supplying and delivery. She brings in the ingredients and goods inside the Krusty Krab, ranging from cleaning supplies, and most importantly, stocking the Krabby Patty ingredients. And have this meme format, do whatever you want with it. Plankton and Karen are the iconic husband and wife who run the chum bucket. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be adding a third wheel. And analyzing Plankton as a person, I think it's telling that the only person he has a good relationship with is a robot he created. And so I believe it would be unlike everything we know about him to give him a friend who's, well, alive. Who has an actual soul and feelings. Let's make that character actually dead. I'm sorry Plankton, I'm so mean to you. My idea is to have Plankton's new partner in crime be entirely just a fossil. I started off by designing the rock the fossil is going to be stuck on. I gave it a bit of depth and then overlaid a rock texture. And now it's time to design the fossil itself, inspired by this fossil I found on Google and the Pokemon Kabuto. I added different layers of shaping to give the fossil a unique shape and a whole bunch of disgusting little tiny legs. I gave the fossil a 10 color scheme and finally a shadow to bring the fossil death. And meet Fossil. Yeah, I don't have a name for them, you can come up with something in the comments. And all they do is basically just sit there. I feel like Plankton talking to a glorified rock would be pretty funny, but also maybe he can have some sort of device that will let him speak to the fossil, who will do nothing but just... The boarding school is the next location we'll be visiting, the place where every resident of Bikini Bottom goes to learn how to drive and get their driver license, led by Mrs. Puff. One thing that isn't really addressed at all in the show is, well, Miss Puff is entrusted in handling these boats all by herself. But what happens if they crash or malfunction? What this place is missing is a mechanic.
I'm a mechanic.
And hey, maybe we can finally have an actual use for the lighthouse and turn the first floor into a warehouse. I wanted the character who would do all the repair work to have a firm design made out of sturdy materials, and so my idea was to make an isopod character because of the sturdy shell. I created a unique head shape, 2 antennas, and then began shaping up the shell using multiple layers, 2 eyes, and an awkward set of teeth, 2 legs lanky arms and legs, and finally, a clipboard and a wrench to fix up the boat. Meet Carla. Just like SpongeBob, she also used to be a student in Miss Puff boarding school. She formed a great bond with Mrs. Puff, but after obtaining her driver license first try, she studied boat technology to become her mechanic and stay with her forever. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are very beloved characters in the show, so I thought it would be fun to introduce a new character to their dynamic. Originally, I thought of giving them another human partner, or maybe a lovable pet, but no. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are inspired by Batman and Robin, and anyone who knows anything about the Batman franchise knows that if there's a Batman and a Robin, there's always an Alfred, who's essentially a butler and father figure for Batman, and that's exactly the type of character I wanted to replicate. But then, I ran into a dilemma. The whole gimmick of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy is that, well, they're not in their glory days. They're old. And considering a father figure would have to be even older, it wouldn't make sense for the current day to have the characters be equally old, and would make even less sense if the character was straight up dead. So I did some thinking, but then I came to the perfect conclusion. There's one species on the planet that can actually live forever. That being the immortal jellyfish. And so with that idea in mind, I immediately got to work. So I started by creating the circular body, added these separated round segments, gave it a whole bunch of jellyfish limbs, perfect for doing work around the layer, and then I worked out the complexities of the immortal jellyfish body structure with these lines. This red part inside of it is actually its stomach, but I thought it would be cool to repurpose it to look like a necktie. And finally, I gave it glasses. Not for any particular reason, I just thought they would look cool. Meet Gelsworth. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, trusty caretaker and butler. Nowadays, he volunteers at their retirement home and takes care of them to this day. And if you're wondering what's underneath the glasses, now that we created our hero, let's create a brand new villain, alongside Dirty Bubble and Man Ray. And to tackle the logistics of the show, how can these villains even afford to create all of these machines? We need to make a character with lots of money that can actually fund our villains. My idea for this character is to have it be a shrimp. The idea for a shrimp character simply comes from these whiskers they have that kinda make them look like evil businessmen. I started by creating a sloped face, a pair of eyes, and a mischievous grin, so I gave him the mustache, a pair of eyebrows, and then moved on to construct the body, separated into 3 different segments. I gave him 2 claw hands and his signature top hat. On the bottom, I gave him a shrimp tail, a skinny pair of legs, and finally, a cane. Meet Sir Shrimp. He's a known businessman who contributes to Bikini Bottom at the front, but secretly financially supports the villains on the back. And he's probably chill with Squilliam. The Bargain Mart is a very underappreciated location in the show, where the citizens of Bikini Bottom can buy groceries and goods to their heart's content. Besides the cashier, we know absolutely nothing about who actually works in this place. And so, I think it's finally time to introduce the manager of the Bargain Mart. The story itself has obvious pirate theming, and so the character will also be based on that. So let's start designing. My idea for this character is to have it be an anglerfish. I started off by building out his face with a really big jaw, as well as little whiskers to make the design a little more interesting. I gave him a dirty set of large and sharp fangs, and then moved on to what's probably the most iconic trait of the anglerfish, its rod, with a distinctive yellow color to fit in with his yellow eyes and orange body. I gave him a plump body type, thin arms, thin legs, a tail, and the absolute most important part of his design, the belly button. Finishing it off with a pirate's bandana, donning the Bargain Mart logo all around. Meet Anjo, the manager of the Bargain Mart. Let's move over to the next beloved location, Goo Lagoon, one of the most popular destinations in Bikini Bottom for relaxation and fun. This location had me a little stumped, considering basically every role in the beach is already taken. We have a lifeguard, a bartender, gym instructor, surfing, so I wanted to go in a completely different direction. My idea is to have a character whose home habitat is the Goo Lagoon, who fell into slumber thousands of years ago, who had their entire home overrun by the beachgoers. The sea animal I thought best suited this role would be a sand dollar, who are very flat, boring sea urchins that have a really cool star pattern on their tops. I started off by designing the shell structure, and then right under it, a skeptic pair of eyes. I added the star symbol up top, and then went on to create its body, a long thin mass shrouded in darkness. I added some small holes around its shell, and finally, a whole bunch of tiny feet. And after some off-screen touch-ups, here's my final design. Meet Penny. Named after the fact we call their species sand dollars. Dollars, penny, get it? I'd like to imagine that one day, when Patrick went to the beach, he found the star marking on Penny's back and laid on it, which awakened it from a 1,000-year slumber to find out that the citizens of Bikini Bottom have turned its home into an attraction. And now, Penny spends her time terrorizing the beachgoers, but is, understandably, afraid of Larry. Glove World is the hit attraction of Bikini Bottom, a magical place for kids and grown-ups alike where fantasy and fun comes to life. Considering Glove World is an obvious allegory to Disney World, this would make the mascot of Glove World, Glovey Glove, an allegory to Mickey Mouse. It would only make sense to give him the equivalent of a Minnie Mouse. Basically, I wanted to create Meaty Mitten. I started by building up the mitten shape, and added these massive adorable red cheeks, a wide smiling mouth, and a pair of eyes staring straight into your soul. And finally, the legs of the actor underneath. And now we have a beautiful relationship that could be made into an infinite amount of merch. The tree dome is Sandy's airfield habitat for non-sea creatures that she's been hogging all to herself. So this would be the perfect opportunity to introduce a brand new land species into the world of SpongeBob. Sandy was able to get all 3 of her nieces down here, so what's to say she can't get anyone else down here? Sandy is a scientist, and most science experiments require a qualified assistant. So this new character would be a partner to Sandy. One type of creature we've seen be able to live in Sandy's dome are insects, like the butterfly that gave every child trauma. So I thought it would be a great idea to introduce an insect character into the world of SpongeBob, and for that, I chose a fly. Flies are pretty disgusting creatures, so I wanted to try my best to make him look as appealing as possible. I started by giving him very large eyes, turned their blood-sucking tube mouth into a cute little cat mouth, and then added the pattern on their eyes. 2 little antennas up top, a peanut-shaped body, 2 stubby arms and legs, and a pair of majestic fly wings. Meet Sandy Chick's assistant, Wally, named after my favorite place to squash his species. Wally walks around Bikini Bottom with a helmet to breathe underwater, just like Sandy. But unlike her, he has wings that let him fly around. Not only is he an expert scientist, he helps Sandy practice karate, because as we all know, flies make excellent dodgers. Let me know which one of these 10 designs is your favorite, and please subscribe if you enjoyed this video and you wanna see more.